I'm Evelyn. This incident took place a couple of years ago, and I'm happy to say that I've freed myself of these people. I did have lots of good times with them, but the bad times that I did have with them were enough to break our relationship. But before I tell you about the incident, I think it's necessary to give you a lot of background information about my ex-husband, Benny, and his family. Benny and I met at college. We were in our senior year when we met. We found each other because we were at the library at the same time almost every weekend. We always sat next to each other, and that just started a conversation. We ended up going on quite a few dates after our initial conversations. Before I knew it, we were dating. About 5 months after both of us graduated, we decided to move in together. Benny was a fun-loving and very easygoing man. I guess that's what drew me into him even more, because I was a very tightly wound person. I needed everything organized and in place, while Benny was a more go-with-the-flow kind of person. He balanced me out perfectly. A few months after we moved in together and had enough time to settle down with each other, we decided that it was time for us to introduce each other to our families. My family was a little overprotective of me, so Benny did have to go through an interview of sorts with them before he was approved. Meeting Benny's parents, on the other hand, made it clear to me where he got his easy personality from. Benny came from a family that loved to prank each other. They thought of it as a way to bond with each other. It was fun and cute most of the time. They were mindful enough to not go too far with the pranks when it came to me, because they knew that I wasn't the biggest fan. The first prank they ever played on me was when I met them for the first time, back when Benny and I had just started dating. They purposely oversalted my food. I didn't know about Benny's love for pranks because Benny never warned me. He didn't tell me because that was supposed to be part of the whole plan. Anyway, while everyone sat and praised the food, I had to sit there and try my best to eat it. Benny's dad, Alan, kept asking me to continue eating, but I was already feeling like all the water in my body had dried up. Finally, Benny's mom broke her character and began laughing. I looked at her in confusion. She told me to stop eating. They told me that they had pranked me and it was a little initiation into their family. I will admit that it did make me laugh, and I did enjoy that moment. I thought it would create a better dynamic between Benny's parents and me. Whenever I did meet Benny's parents, I would either be full on guard and ready to expose any prank, or I would take part in pranking someone. It was always a good time. I even knew that it made Benny feel great about me because I took the pranks so well. One day, I got curious about why Benny was just so appreciative of my good nature about the pranks. He literally never stopped thanking me for playing along with his parents' antics after we were returning back from his parents' place. "Why are you always so appreciative of me after we come back from your parents' place?" "Oh, because, you're okay with their pranks." That's hardly a proper reason. Who wouldn't be okay with a bunch of harmless and fun pranks? "Oh, trust me, a lot of people. I've had a lot of relationships fall through because they couldn't stand my parents' pranks." That's crazy. This is all just good-natured fun, and it's a lot coming from me. I'm not even a fan of pranks. I know. That's exactly why I'm so glad that you're okay with it. Hell, you even participate in pranking others. Yeah, as long as no one is crossing any boundaries or getting hurt, there's no harm in some fun. I really hit the jackpot with you, didn't I? I'd love to say yes, but really, this is the bare minimum. I am concerned about the kind of women you were seeing before me, though. Knowing that Benny found me to be a breath of fresh air made me feel warm on the inside. Benny was the first guy that was actually fun to be around with. I didn't have to change a single thing about myself. He was careful to make sure he wasn't overstepping any of my boundaries, while also making sure that I was having a good time. I knew for sure that I had hit the jackpot with him. I guess it came as no surprise to anyone after dating for 3 years that we got engaged. Of course, the engagement also happened in a prank fashion. We were at Benny's parents' place for dinner one day, and his mom, Sherry, ended up spilling her glass of wine all over my dress. Everybody made such a big fuss about it, but I just laughed it off because I knew it was a prank. Sherry led me upstairs to help get into dry and clean clothes. She had me wear sweatpants and a hoodie because all her good clothes were in the wash. I tried suggesting that I could wear Alan's clothes, but she told me that they would be too big on me. I knew better than to argue with my boyfriend's mom, so I let it go. Anyway, when I got back down, Alan looked at me in confusion and asked me what was in my pocket. I don't even know how I didn't notice there was something in my hoodie pocket. I reached my hand into the pocket and pulled the object out. In my hand was a ring box. I looked up in confusion and saw Benny getting down on one knee. I couldn't help but scream a little. That was the best prank ever. Benny and I were set to get married in the next year. I had always made big plans for the kind of wedding I was going to have, and while I enjoyed the pranks that Benny's parents played, I knew I didn't want any pranks happening on my wedding day. I just wanted it to be a day of fun without anything going wrong. No humiliation or embarrassment, just good old-fashioned joy. I knew it would have been a sensitive topic to bring up with Alan and Sherry by myself, so I hoped that Benny would have been able to do it. Of course, I was also a little apprehensive about approaching him, but it was still 100 times easier to approach him than his parents. One night, before we went to sleep, I decided to talk to Benny about it. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. It's a little sensitive." "Yeah?" "Let me just say that you know that I love your family and I thoroughly enjoy the way we're comfortable with each other enough to prank each other." "Uh-huh." "While I love them to bits, I also kind of maybe sort of don't want them throwing any pranks on our wedding." "What? Why?" "It's only because I want us to have the perfect wedding." "But what's more perfect than everyone laughing?" "Aren't there several other ways to make others laugh than one of us getting pranked?" "Yeah, I guess. I don't think my parents would be too happy about it. They love playing pranks, you know that." "That's why I wanted to ask you if you would be able to talk to them about it." "No way. I do not want to do that. They will probably not even listen." "Look, I know that this is a big event and your family wants it to be big and full of who you are. But this is my wedding too. I'm just asking for something small. It's only one time and only for a few hours that I'm asking them not to play a prank." "Yeah, I'm on board with whatever you want too. I just won't be the one to tell my parents. You have to do that yourself." "But I'm already doing you a favor by agreeing to what you want. This is your duty now. You want it? You ask for it." I was annoyed with the way Benny was reacting. I was not asking him to do something crazy. I would never have had him ask my parents to do something I knew would upset them. I kept trying to get Benny to talk to his parents after that conversation, but he just didn't budge. I was upset, but since I wanted absolutely no pranks on our big day, I knew I had to talk to his parents. I decided to call Sherry and Alan over for dinner one night and broke the news to them. They were not happy. They tried to tell me that I was robbing Benny of enjoying a family tradition on his big day. But I didn't see why it had to be carried out on a big day to begin with. The air between Benny's parents and I was a little tense after that. They agreed that no pranks would be played at the wedding, and I breathed a huge sigh of relief. Benny also became a little distant from me, and even though I kept trying to talk to him about it, he never wanted to. At some point, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. I mean, was it really that big of a deal? Was I actually being a douchebag? I didn't want to jeopardize my marriage before it even happened. I decided to talk to my mom about it because I was really close to just giving in and telling Benny that his parents could do whatever. I went to my mom because she was the most rational person I knew. She never let her emotions get in the way of her reasoning. Plus, she had been a victim of some of the pranks that Benny's family played, and while she didn't enjoy it, she wasn't mad about it either. Okay, I have a sort of dilemma. Oh, I love dilemmas. Lay it on me. Well, you know how Benny's family loves to play pranks? Uh-huh. Is it wrong of me to not want them to do any of that at our wedding? Why don't you want them to do it? I know I didn't enjoy their pranks, but you've never had a problem with it. Yeah, that's kind of why it's a dilemma. I just want a good old-fashioned wedding. I guess I'm also scared they'd take the prank too far, given that it's a big day for Benny and me. What did Benny have to say about that? Well, he wasn't happy in the least. He's been distant for a while now. Did you talk to Sherry and Alan? Oh yeah, we had a full-blown argument about it, and even though they agreed, they've been off with me ever since. I mean, if they're making such a big deal about it, they can't possibly have had something good planned. They must have been planning something big and embarrassing. Right. That's what I was thinking. And my money is on you being the one that would be humiliated. So I don't think you were wrong for asking for it. Just keep trying to talk to Benny. I'm sure he'll come around to understanding. I was grateful to have my mom clear my thoughts for me. She made me feel like I was actually sane and not going crazy. I did take her advice to talk to Benny properly, and although it did take a few days for him to actually come around to talking to me, he began talking to me properly, although he was still a little distant. I figured that it was the best I was going to get because he probably felt really bad about not being able to continue a tradition. About 2 weeks before the wedding, however, Benny suddenly began treating me really well. He was back to being his happy-go-lucky self. While I was happy to have him back to being himself, I was worried that the change came about because he was hiding something from me. I tried to ask him what was going on, but he kept reassuring me that there was nothing wrong and that he had just finally accepted what I had asked for. Even though all my instincts were screaming that Benny was lying, I decided to let it go because I had bigger fish to fry. On the day of our wedding, everything was going according to plan. The ceremony was beautiful and I cried way more than I should have. Benny also shed a few tears as I walked down the aisle. It truly was a memorable moment. Then came the reception. While it did start off okay, that was not how it ended. When it came time to cut the cake, Benny and I made our way over to the table that had the cake while everyone stood around us watching. As I went to cut the cake, Alan came forward, grabbed a piece of the cake and threw it in Benny's and my direction. Then Benny and Sherry also grabbed pieces of the cake and threw them in my direction. I was shocked. The guests around me fell silent as Benny and his parents roared with laughter. I had told them explicitly not to do this, and my mother was right. I was the one who was humiliated. Benny noticed the tears that were forming in my eyes and tried to talk to me, but I walked out of the hall. He followed me and grabbed my hand to stop me. Babe, what's wrong? Are you serious? Are you actually asking me what's wrong? Look, if you're worried about the cake, there's another one waiting out back. I don't care about the damn cake, Benny. I asked you guys to not do one thing, and that's exactly what you did. Geez, calm down. It's just a small prank. I don't care. You just went behind my back to do what I asked you not to do. On top of that, you decided that the perfect prank was to absolutely humiliate me and ruin my day. Hey, to be totally honest, my parents came up with the prank. I just went along with it. That's your problem. You knew I didn't want it, and you still let your parents do it. You didn't want to break the news to your parents, so I told them that I didn't want them playing any pranks. The least you could have done was keep them from doing it behind my back. Why are you being such a crybaby about this? You've never had an issue before. You're impossible. I stormed out after that and went over to my mom's. Thankfully, her mom had always kept a spare key under a flower pot outside the main door. I walked into the house and got my sticky cake covered clothes off and took a nice long hot shower. I couldn't believe that Benny didn't even understand how bad what he did was. Okay, honestly, aside from the prank, I had paid good money for the dress and my makeup. He ruined it in one moment, and I didn't even get to have the perfect pictures of the two of us. I was raging with anger on the inside, and I knew for a fact that I did not want to see Benny and especially his parents for a while. My mom comforted me for the rest of the week. She told me that the wedding party practically died down after that, and Benny and his parents received a lot of backlash from the guests. I felt happy that, at the very least, I had people backing me up. Benny kept trying to get in contact with me to apologize, and I finally responded after a week of ignoring him. We met up at a dinner, talked about things. For the first time, I saw how devastated Benny was. He seemed genuinely apologetic and promised me that he would never let anything like that happen to me ever again. I was happy with Benny's apology, so I gave him a second chance. His parents, however, did not reach out to me until 2 months later. I didn't really want to talk to them, but they did apologize. I decided that 2 months was already way too long for me to hold a grudge against them, so if they actively made an effort to repair our relationship, I would give them a chance. Sherry and Alan actually came through with their efforts. They began hosting dinners at their place again, and pranks were put on hold for a while. They also genuinely apologized to me, and I forgave them. I was still very cautious of them when it came to big events, but they proved to me over time that they had changed. About 2 years after Benny and I got married, I got a huge promotion. Since I had a lot of extra cash to spare, I decided to give Benny and me a treat. So I was thinking, with my big promotion, maybe you would like to go to Hawaii? Oh my God, are you serious? Yes, of course. We've been working really hard these past few years, and I think we deserve a good, luxurious break. That sounds amazing. Are you sure you want to spend your money on this, though? Of course. Why not? I don't know. We could maybe use it towards saving up for a house. I've already put money aside for that. This trip will happen with the extra money I have left over. Oh, wow. Okay, then. Although, what is it? So, my parents have been down on funds and they haven't been able to go on a trip together for a while. Do you think it would be possible to invite them along? I don't know. I wanted it to just be the two of us. I promise you they'll be on their own. They'll leave us alone and let us have our own fun. We'll just need to give them a little money to spend. Okay, that's doable. Although the second they do anything out of line, I'm leaving them there. I swear they won't do anything out of line. I was very skeptical of Sherry and Alan joining us because the last time I had a big expensive event, they ruined it. And Benny sided with them. I didn't want them to do anything to ruin the trip, so I decided to take some safety measures. About 2 days before we were set to leave for Hawaii, Alan and Sherry came over to stay. Our place was much closer to the airport and we didn't want to be late. Everything seemed to be normal. All of us were excited about our upcoming trip and we couldn't stop talking about it. I got busy with packing Benny's and my stuff. The night before the flight, I gave each of them their ticket and passport. None of them checked to see the contents of what I gave them, which was good because I only gave them one-way tickets to Hawaii. If any of them even tried to cross me, they could find their way back. It was the peak holiday season, so flight prices were soaring high. Ha, pun intended. I knew that they wouldn't have the money to come back, so they really had to be on their best behavior if they wanted to have a good vacation and come back home. I fell asleep that night feeling really excited about the trip. When I woke up, however, Benny wasn't next to me. That was odd because Benny never woke up before me. I'm always the one who was to literally drag him out of bed. I walked around the house and it's dead silent. I went over to the guest bedroom and it was empty. None of the packed luggage except for mine was there. As I walked back into my room to call one of them, I saw a note stuck to the door. The note said, "Look who got pranked again." I want to say that I was shocked, but I really wasn't. I was sad though. I really did think we had a good thing going on for a little bit. I believed that we had changed for the better, but that clearly wasn't the case. Benny and his parents only found joy in ruining the big things for me, and that was not going to fly. At that moment, I was so glad that I had foolproofed my plan. I waited until I was sure that the three of them had boarded the flight and had landed in Hawaii before calling them. I tried calling Benny and Alan, but neither of them picked up. Finally, I called Sherry and she picked up. "Hello, look who finally woke up." "Don't even try. Why did you guys leave without me? Couldn't you have woken me up?" "It was just a prank, Evelyn. Calm down." "How could you go on a trip that I planned without me? That's just cruel. This is the second thing you've sabotaged." "Oh, grow up, Evelyn. It was a tiny prank that we played on you. You can book yourself another ticket and come over." "Actually, you know what? You're wrong. Don't tell me you're going to throw a fit about this and not come at all. Don't be a baby." "Well, yes, but also I'm not the one that got pranked. You are." "What do you mean?" "Why don't you check your bag for the ticket and see?" "You only booked us a one-way ticket? How could you do that? Book us one return ticket now." "I'm sorry, Sherry, but you play stupid games and you win stupid prizes. Enjoy your little vacation. Oh, and tell Benny that I'll be divorcing him. Bye now." I don't know what happened to the three of them after or how they managed to come back, but when they did, I had the divorce papers delivered to Benny. He tried to reach out to me and left me hundreds of voicemails ranging from anger to abandoning them to pleading for me to stay with him. I knew I wanted nothing to do with him because he had proved to me that he could not be trusted. I have since moved on from Benny. I have learned to live on my own once again, and I have learned what it is like to make sure my boundaries are always being respected. And that's something that everyone should learn. Family or not, boundaries are boundaries and they are meant to be kept. Don't get played. I'm Rita, and I'm 37. I've always been a firm believer in karma and doing right by others. I try to be a pacifist and avoid confrontation, believing that good actions lead to good rewards and good karma. But lately, that patience was wearing thin, especially when it came to my husband, Quincy. Things were great between us at first, but everything changed when we learned that I was infertile and couldn't have children. Quincy just seemed to stop caring about me. He started coming home drunk, picking fights for no reason, and then apologizing the next morning. It became a vicious cycle, and I was getting fed up. One evening, after another senseless argument, I finally decided to confront him. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted answers, and I wanted to know why he was treating me this way. "Quincy, we need to talk." "What now, Rita?" "I want to know what's going on with you." "What's going on with me? Nothing's going on. Leave me alone." "No, I won't leave you alone. I can't keep living like this. You come home drunk every night and treat me like garbage. I don't deserve this." "It's not like you're any fun anymore, Rita. You can't even give me a child. What good are you?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had hoped that he would be supportive and understanding, but instead, he was blaming me for something beyond my control. "Infertility is not my fault, Quincy. It's not something I chose, and I can't believe you're using it against me like this." "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean it. I'm just frustrated." "You can't keep using that as an excuse. I'm also struggling. I'm also frustrated. But Quincy just brushed me off and stumbled off to bed, leaving me feeling even more hurt and alone. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I had to find a way to stand up for myself and protect my own well-being. Over the next few days, I did a lot of soul searching and talking to friends and family. I realized that I deserved better than the way Quincy was treating me. I deserved love, respect, and support, especially during difficult times like these. With a newfound determination, I decided to have another conversation with Quincy. I needed to be firm about my boundaries and let him know that I wouldn't tolerate being treated poorly any longer. Quincy, we need to talk again. What now? I can't keep living like this. I deserve to be treated with respect and love, and I won't tolerate being belittled or ignored. Quincy seemed taken aback by my assertiveness, but he didn't say anything. I'm willing to work on our relationship, but we both need to put in effort, and if things don't change, I won't hesitate to walk away. For a moment, he looked like he might say something, but he remained silent. I could see the conflict in his eyes, but I knew that I couldn't back down. I had to stand up for myself and my own happiness. It was a roller coaster ride with Quincy. Sometimes things would improve between us and we'd have moments of happiness. But then it would all come crashing down again. It was like an endless cycle of ups and downs, and I felt so helpless. I tried talking to him about our issues, but the more I complained, the worse things seemed to get. It was like he didn't want to hear what I had to say, and it just made me feel silenced and invisible. I started noticing that he was working late more often, and it made me suspicious. When I asked him about it, he always had an excuse, saying that his boss wanted him to work late shifts. At first, I believed him. But then I found out that his boss was a woman, and alarm bells started going off in my head. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I started paying more attention to his behavior and noticed that he was being secretive with his phone, always keeping it close and never letting me see it. It made me feel like he was hiding something from me. One evening, while he was in the shower, I couldn't resist the urge to check his phone. I know it's not right to invade someone's privacy, but my gut was telling me that something was wrong and I needed answers. As I scrolled through his messages, my heart sank. There were flirty texts from a woman named Karen, his boss. My worst fears were confirmed. He was having an affair. I felt a mixture of emotions, anger, hurt, and betrayal. How could he do this to me? We were supposed to be partners, supporting each other through thick and thin, and yet he was sneaking around behind my back. When he came out of the shower, I couldn't look him in the eye. I knew I had to confront him about what I found, but I was scared of what he would say. So, like a fool, I kept it to myself. Yep, you heard me. I didn't confront him about it. I don't know why. I guess I was scared of how he would react. The cheating continued, and every time Quincy said he would be working late, I knew deep down it was just another lie. It broke me inside to know that he was still seeing Karen, even after everything we had been through. Months passed, and Quincy finally told me that he had something important to say. My heart sank, fearing the worst. He sat me down and said that I needed to move in with his mother, Johanna, because she was sick. Rita, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's important. All right, what is it now? My mother, she's been really sick lately, and the doctors say she needs constant care. I can't do it myself because I'll be too busy with work. I need you to move in with her and take care of her for me. Wait, what? Are you serious? You want me to leave our home and move in with your mother because you're too busy with work? It's not like that, Rita. I just can't handle it all on my own right now. You know how demanding my job is. So what? You expect me to drop everything and take care of your mother while you go off and do whatever you please? No, it's not like that at all. I just thought you would understand and want to help. She's your mother-in-law too, after all. Yes, she is, but that doesn't mean I have to be the one responsible for her care all the time. What about you? Aren't you supposed to be her son? I am, but I have so much on my plate right now. I can't handle it all. I thought you would be more understanding. Understanding? I've been understanding for so long, Quincy. I've put up with your behavior towards me. I've tried to be patient and supportive, but I can't do this anymore. I'm tired, and I can't keep pretending everything is okay. I know I haven't treated you well, Rita, and I'm sorry for everything. I want to make things right, and that's why I need you to help my mother. I promise I'll do better. I couldn't believe he could look at me with such pleading eyes while cheating on me. Men are sick. Promises, promises, Quincy. I've heard them all before. I can't keep putting myself on the back burner for you and your excuses. Please, Rita, I'm begging you. I can't handle this on my own. I need you. No, Quincy. I need to take care of myself for once. I deserve better than this, and I can't keep sacrificing my own happiness for you and your problems. Rita, please don't leave me. I love you. I need you. Please help me out here. I was skeptical, to say the least. It felt like another excuse to push me away. But I loved and cared for Johanna, and I didn't want her to suffer, so I agreed to go live with her. At first, I thought maybe this would be a fresh start for us. Perhaps taking some time apart would help him realize what he was losing. But deep down, I knew it was wishful thinking. Quincy had already shown me who he truly was, and no amount of distance would change that. Living with Johanna was challenging, but I did my best to take care of her. It was heartbreaking to see her in pain, and I wished Quincy would be there for her too. But he was always too busy, wrapped up in his own world of cheating, no doubt. What a terrible son, refusing to take care of his mother because he wanted to get his fix. How disgusting. So, it had been 2 months since I moved in with Johanna to take care of her. She was such a sweet and kind old lady, and we got along really well. She was tough as nails and never took anyone's BS, but she had a heart of gold. During my time with her, she would often ask why Quincy wouldn't come to see her. I had been making up excuses, not wanting to expose the truth about his cheating and hurt her. I didn't want to break her heart, especially when she was already battling sickness. One day, Johanna was bedridden and barely speaking. I could see how much weaker she had become. But then she looked at me with those wise eyes and asked me to tell her the truth. Rita, my dear, there's something you've been hiding from me. I can see it in your eyes. What is it, my child? I took a deep breath, feeling a lump in my throat, and finally mustered the courage to speak the truth. Johanna, I haven't been completely honest with you. It's about Quincy. He hasn't been treating me well, and he's been cheating on me. Johanna's eyes widened, and for a moment there was silence in the room. I could see the pain and anger flicker in her eyes, but she remained calm. Oh, my dear Rita, I had a feeling something was wrong, but I never expected this. I'm so sorry you've had to go through this. I didn't want to burden you with my problems, Johanna. You've already been through so much. Sweetheart, you're not burdening me. You're family, and families should share their burdens and joys. Now, tell me everything. And so I poured my heart out to Johanna. I told her about the countless nights Quincy came home drunk, berating me for things I hadn't done. I told her how he had stopped caring for me after we found out I couldn't have children, how he had started spending more time away from home and cheating on me with his boss, Karen. Johanna listened attentively, her expression a mix of sadness and understanding. As I told her about the suspicion of him seeing his female boss, her eyes narrowed and she sighed deeply. Rita, you deserve better than this. No woman should have to endure such treatment. I raised Quincy to be a good man, but it seems he has lost his way." "I know, Ma. It's been a never-ending roller coaster of emotions. I feel so helpless, and the more I complain, the worse things get." "You're not helpless, my dear. You're strong, and you deserve happiness. No one has the right to treat you this way." "But I don't know what to do, Johanna. I don't want to break your heart by confronting him about his cheating." "You don't have to worry about me, Rita. You've taken such good care of me. Now let's focus on you taking care of yourself. You're going to be okay, and I'll make sure of that." And so Johanna reassured me that she had a plan to help me. Her words gave me hope and strength, and I knew I could count on her to support me through this difficult time. I felt blessed to have her in my life, and little did I know that her plan would change everything. She explained that she had saved up some money and she wanted to give her inheritance money to me. She said, "Rita, you deserve better than that cheating jerk. You've been taking care of me so well, and it's time I do something for you. Take this money and go start a new life away from him. And when I die, take my inheritance money as well." "Don't speak like that, Johanna. You're not going anywhere anytime soon. Who are we kidding, my dear? I'm so old and frail. I think I feel it coming. But don't you worry about me. I need you to keep on living. Please promise me that you'll take all the money I give you." I was overwhelmed with emotion. I never expected this kind of support and love from my mother-in-law. She was truly an amazing woman. Johanna continued, "You're a strong and smart woman, Rita. Don't let him bring you down. Leave him and find happiness for yourself. You deserve to be loved and cherished." Her words touched my heart, and I knew she was right. I couldn't keep living like this, chained to a man who didn't value me. With Johanna's encouragement, I found the courage to make a change. After Johanna had shared her plan with me, I couldn't believe the kindness and love she had for me. She wanted to change her will, making me the sole beneficiary of her estates and inheritance, which was worth $500,000. It was a huge sum of money, and I was overwhelmed by her generosity. Quincy had no idea about any of this. He remained in the dark while Johanna and I took care of the necessary changes. It felt good to have something for myself, something that was mine, especially after enduring the pain he caused me. Unfortunately, but also fortunately, not long after, Johanna peacefully passed away in her sleep. It was a heartbreaking moment, and I couldn't help but feel the deepest sense of loss. I had grown close to her during the time I lived with her, and her absence left a void in my heart. What hurt even more was that Quincy wasn't around for her final moments, despite me informing him days in advance to come and see his dying mother. He chose to be absent, and it made me realize just how awful he truly was. I knew then that I had to leave him once and for all. The funeral arrangements were finalized, and Quincy approached me to discuss the issue of inheritance. He had no idea what was coming, and I could see the greed in his eyes. But I was done playing nice. I decided it was time to reveal everything to him. I told him that I knew about his affair, and I even shared that I had informed Johanna about it. His face turned red with embarrassment and anger. He couldn't believe that his secret had been exposed. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Oh, save it, Quincy. I know that you've been cheating on me with someone from work." "Karen?" Quincy's face turned pale, and he stammered, trying to deny it. What are you talking about? You must be mistaken." "No, I'm not. I found out the truth, and I couldn't bear to live a lie anymore. But that's not all. I also want you to know that I told Johanna about your affair." "You what? Why would you tell her that?"
Because she deserved to know. How could you betray me like that? Betray you? You've been betraying me for months with your lies and infidelity. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer, especially when Johanna and I were making changes to her will. Changes to her will? What does that have to do with anything? I told him that all of his inheritance money now belonged to me. His eyes widened in shock and he stuttered, demanding to know how that could be possible. Johanna changed her will, Quincy. She made me the sole beneficiary of her estates and inheritance. She knew about your affair and she wanted to make sure I was taken care of, even after she was gone. She was someone that you took for granted, and honestly, I feel sorry for you. Quincy's eyes widened in shock and he seemed at a loss for words. So you see, Quincy, there's nothing left for you. All of the inheritance is mine, and I've made up my mind I want a divorce. You can't do this, Rita. It's my mother's money, and you had no right to interfere. I didn't interfere, Quincy. Johanna made her own decisions. If you want, I'll CC you the documents. She hated you in her last moments, you know. Stop it. Too bad you were too busy on top of someone else to focus on your dying mother and your devoted wife. I said, shut up. She saw through your lies just like I did. She wanted to protect me from someone like you. This is unfair. I deserve a share of that money too. No, you don't. You're a cockroach and you deserve nothing. I'm so glad that she doesn't have to deal with your BS any longer, and neither do I. So, this is it? You're really leaving me? Yes, Quincy. I can't stay in a marriage where there's no trust or love. Johanna's inheritance gives me the chance to start anew, and I won't waste it on someone who doesn't truly care for me. After the confrontation, Quincy tried to fight for the inheritance money, but it was all in vain. The will was clear and there was no changing Johanna's decision. He swore that he'd find a way to get his hands on that money, but I wasn't going to let him ruin my newfound freedom. Once the divorce was finalized, I made a bold decision. I decided to move to a different state, far away from Quincy and his toxicity. I even changed my name to start a new chapter in my life. I was done with him and his craziness. It was time for me to focus on myself and my happiness. Living in a new place with a fresh start felt exhilarating. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. No more walking on eggshells or dealing with his emotional roller coaster. I was finally free from his antics. I made new friends, pursued my passions, and embraced every opportunity that came my way. I was grateful for the inheritance money, not just for the financial security it provided, but for the chance it gave me to build a life that I truly loved. I'll always be thankful to Johanna for believing in me and protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. Her love and support gave me the strength to break free from a toxic relationship and find my own happiness. As time went by, I learned to love myself and appreciate the person I was becoming. I surrounded myself with people who cherished and valued me. My life was filled with joy, laughter, and genuine love. I couldn't help but smile every time I thought about how far I had come. I was no longer the woman who believed in karma and stayed quiet in the face of adversity. I was now a woman who fought for her own happiness and refused to settle for anything less. Life was far from perfect, but it was my life, and I was in control of it. I cherished every moment of my newfound freedom and vowed to never let anyone else dictate my happiness. And so my story goes on, a tale of resilience, growth, and self-discovery. I'm eternally grateful for the chance to live my best life, and I'll always carry a piece of Johanna's love and wisdom in my heart. The end of one chapter marked the beginning of another, and I was determined to make it a story worth telling. I was finally free, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. Hello, I'm Allie, a 29-year-old woman, I grew up in a single-parent home. My dad passed away when I was really young, and my mom never remarried. She worked hard every single day to feed me and clothe me, and she never failed to tell me about her struggles. I guess that was why I always felt so indebted to her, even when she treated me like trash. You see, my mom would complain about working so hard to feed me, yet she would constantly criticize me for my weight. I remember the first time I hated myself when I was 8, and my mom walked in on me eating a bar of chocolate after dinner. She yelled at me and told me that I was getting too fat and ugly for her liking. That never stopped. It only got worse as the years progressed. I tried to talk to her, but it never worked. All I got were more insults. The thing is that I wasn't even fat or ugly either. I weighed the normal weight for my age and height, and I got a fair amount of attention from boys. I just didn't understand why my mom hated me so much. I wanted to move out when I turned 18, but I didn't have the funds to do it, so I was stuck living with my mom while I attended college. It was at college that I had my first boyfriend. He was charming and handsome, your typical jock. I was madly in love with him. We got together in the second year and were together until a little after we graduated. I was convinced that he was going to be the one for me. Of course, my mom hated the fact that I had a boyfriend, and I noticed that she would always praise him, but in the same line, insult me. It did not help my already non-existent self-esteem. My boyfriend at that time and I had decided to wait a year and then get married. About 2 months after that decision, he suddenly broke up with me. I was confused and hurt. When I tried to ask him why, he just looked at me in disgust. At that moment, I wanted nothing but the comfort of my mother, so I ran into her arms and cried. Instead of comforting me, she laughed. Thank God he left. He deserves so much better than you. What? Oh yeah, that boy was a pretty tough nut to crack. What do you mean? Oh, it's nothing. He was madly in love with you, but with a little nudge from me, he was able to see the light. See the light? Do you mean, are you saying that you are the reason he broke up with me? What did you say to him? Oh, nothing you don't already know. I just opened his eyes to how ugly you are. When he saw it, he didn't want to marry you, so that's a win. What the hell is wrong with you? There's something seriously wrong in your head. How could you do this to your daughter? Stop being so dramatic, Allie. I know you're sad, but for your own sake, don't indulge in sweets. It'll make you gain more weight. That was what made me snap. I had worked part-time for a long while and had a decent amount of money saved up. That night, while my mom was asleep, I packed my things up and moved out of the house. I stayed at a friend's place until I got myself an apartment. It took a lot of time to heal after that, but when I did, I began to put myself out there a lot more. I began to feel confident in myself. Sometimes I would feel sad that my mom didn't even make an effort to call me or check up on me, but I got over it. I began to check in on her when I felt better, but I still kept the contact minimal. And then I met Holt. Holt and I bumped into each other at a coffee shop. We happened to sit in the same booth because everywhere else was full. We got to talking, and he turned out to be this amazing guy with a great sense of humor. We exchanged numbers, and well, the rest was history. Holt and I dated for around 3 years before deciding to make it official. In those 3 years, I got to meet and interact with Holt's family, who accepted me with open arms. That was a very healing experience. I told Holt about my history with my mom, and needless to say, he was not her biggest fan. I was so incredibly happy to be marrying Holt. I felt like I was on top of the world. It felt like nothing could bring me down. And Holt felt the same way. I could tell because he had a skip in his step, and he was, in general, really happy. It felt great that someone loved me unconditionally. My looks didn't matter, and part of me just wanted to shove that in my mother's face. I knew it would be petty, But when your own mother bullies you about your looks from when you were 5 until you're well into adulthood, you're going to want to be petty. Holt and I began planning the wedding immediately after we got engaged. I kept my idea of revenge on the back burner because I didn't know if it was morally right. About 2 months into planning our wedding, Holt asked me about who I wanted to invite. So, who are you thinking of inviting? Well, all my close family and friends. I don't think I'll have a lot of people to invite. All right. And I don't mean to be insensitive. When you say family, are you asking me if I'm going to invite my mom? Yeah, I know it's a sensitive topic, but I just want some confirmation. I was actually thinking of inviting her. Oh, really? How come? Okay, I know this will sound mean, but I kind of want to rub it in her face, and I've become who she always told me I wouldn't be. Like she used to constantly tell me that no man would ever love me because of my looks. But here I am. Oh, honey, I don't think that's mean at all. In fact, I fully support it. It's the least mean thing I've ever heard of, but it's perfect considering everything that your mother put you through. Really? So you're okay with it? I am, as long as you are. Although I will say that if your mother says anything rude to you, I will interfere. That's absolutely okay. Thanks for supporting me. That's exactly what I'm here for, isn't it? It felt great to have Holt validate my feelings. He knew about the extent of the damage that my mom did to my self-esteem, and yet he was more than willing to accommodate me. I felt a new wave of excitement then. I couldn't wait to brag to my mom about my marriage. I mean, not only was I marrying a rich and handsome man, but it was also a man who showed me in every way possible that he loved me more than anything. That was definitely going to embarrass my mom. For the next few days, as we finalized the technicalities of the invitation, like the look of it and the fonts and the paper, I couldn't help but wonder how my mom would react. Would she go red in the face from humiliation? Would she apologize? Would she actually for once be proud of me? I know that I seem naive to only be thinking about the best case scenarios, but I couldn't help it. Even though I barely contacted her anymore, she was still the only parent I had, and I wanted to have some form of relationship with her. Don't get me wrong, I would never have forgiven her that easily. She put me through years of therapy because of her bullying. I would make sure that she apologized to me properly and then cautiously build a relationship with her. Every time that I had a negative thought about her reaction, I pushed it away because I didn't know how I would have dealt with it. When it came time to print the invitations out, Holt and I sat together and hand wrote the names of our guests on the invitations. We wanted to do a traditional male invitation. When I was writing my mother's name on the invitation, Holt was looking over my shoulder. That's when he held my hand to stop me. I looked at him in confusion. Is everything okay? Yeah, it's just... Do you not want me to invite my mom? No, it's not that. That's your mom's full name? Yeah, why? You guys have different last names. Oh yeah, my mom kept her maiden name after she got married. I got my dad's name. That's funny. Why? What's wrong? I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I have an employee with that same exact name. What? That's crazy. Yeah, she plans to retire in another year or 2. This is super weird. I mean, your mom's name and maiden name are not very popular ones, do you think? I don't know which company she works for, but do you maybe have files of your employees on hand with you right now, or even a staff picture? Oh yeah, of course I do. Holt shot up from the couch and ran into his office. My heart was pounding. What were the chances? I had always believed that the world was a small place, but for it to be this small was crazy. Holt came back with his laptop in hand, and we sat down together to find a picture of the woman with the same name as my mom. Thankfully, the company had just had an event recently and a lot of pictures were taken. Holt and I scrolled through a lot of the pictures before I finally saw her. It was my mom. She was laughing at something someone had said while she held a drink in her hand. I just stared in shock for a couple of seconds before bursting out in laughter. Holt asked me if that was my mom, and I said that it was. Of course, Holt didn't know much about my mom, other than why I didn't keep much contact with her. Holt and I shared a laugh after that because it truly was amazing how wonderful the universe had aligned to put my mother in her place. So now, not only was I going to get married to a rich and handsome man who loved me, but I was also getting married to my mom's boss. That was something I definitely wanted to brag about. I hoped desperately for her sake that she was on her best behavior because she didn't know what she could be risking if she even tried to say anything against me. When we finally sent out the invites, we got a ton of responses almost immediately after they were delivered. I tracked them all to ensure that they reached safely. When I saw that my mom's invitation was accepted, I had hoped to get a quick response, but I got nothing for over a week. I began to lose hope that my mom was even going to come to my wedding. I tried to tell myself that it was no big deal, but like I said, she was my only parent, and getting married was the biggest event in anyone's life. Of course, I wanted my mom there, even if she just sat there silently. Holt could see that I was down and he comforted me. He reminded me that regardless of whether my mom came to the wedding, it would still be our day. We would still be surrounded by people that actually loved us. I began to feel better, but I wasn't fully convinced, and then I got my mom's RSVP and she said yes. That was it. She didn't try to say anything other than yes. Yeah, it hurt that she didn't even call to ask about who I was marrying or even ask about the wedding, but at least she would be there. I messaged her and asked her if she would have liked to be a part of the rehearsal dinner, and she once again replied with just a yes. Having my mom there was a win, a small win, but a win nonetheless. I felt happy. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, I was a nervous wreck. While I was also nervous for my big day, I was also nervous because I would be meeting my mom after 3 years for the first time. I made sure that my dress was perfect, that my hair was all in place, and that my makeup was properly blended. I couldn't help but think at that moment that I didn't even make that much of an effort for Holt. My mom walked into the rehearsal dinner and found me immediately. Holt was busy talking to someone else in some other place in the hall, so Mom never noticed him. She made a beeline straight to me. I felt my hands get clammy as she approached me, but I calmed myself down by reminding myself that no matter what happened, I had the upper hand. She greeted me with a hug before looking me up and down and laughing. I felt myself shrivel up on the inside. She was judging me again, and I felt like the helpless little girl that I was all those years ago. So, who's the unlucky guy? I see you still haven't become skinny, so you must have found some ugly hobo. Mom, that's beyond rude. Oh, please, whoever is choosing to marry you while you look like this must be clearly blind and very unlucky. Actually, I think you're the unlucky one, Quinn. Holt? What are you doing here? What do you think? Didn't his name look familiar to you at all? Well, yeah, but I didn't think... You didn't think what? That your daughter would be capable of marrying someone like me because you think she's too ugly? Or am I enough of a hobo for me to be able to marry your daughter? No, well, I didn't mean it like that. Look. You're on thin ice. It's bad enough that you've insulted me, but if I hear you say one more word against Allie, I swear that I will make your life miserable. Okay, but I must say that Allie, you are an absolute piece of work for purposely going after my boss. What did you think it would do for you? Did you think that I would go easier on you? I didn't purposely go after your boss. We only happened to find out when we were sending the invites, but I did hope to mend our relationship. I guess that won't be happening. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the dinner and I'll see you tomorrow. With that, Holt and I walked away hand in hand. When we had gotten a good distance away from her and out of her eyesight, we dissolved into laughter. The look of absolute horror on her face when she saw Holt was a look I was never going to forget. Yeah, I hoped for a much nicer interaction, but to see her put in her place was actually a lot more satisfying. I was so caught up in my emotions that I didn't even notice Holt walk up to us, but I was really glad that he had managed to come to us right in time. The rest of the evening passed by without any other incident. The next day was hectic. However, when it came time for the ceremony, all I could feel was an immense amount of pride in myself. Seeing Holt stand at the altar with tears in his eyes as he watched me walk down the aisle made all the hours of getting ready worth it. I happened to scan the crowd and spotted my mom. She noticed I was looking at her and she pulled a face. That face was no ordinary face. It was the face she always made whenever I looked ugly or fat. I stumbled as I walked. For a second, I questioned everything I felt. I knew I looked beautiful, but to see my mom so outwardly tell me with her expression that I didn't made me feel very, very insecure. I looked at Holt and all my doubts vanished. He still looked at me like I was the only girl in the room. Other than that, there was no other hitch in the ceremony. Holt and I exchanged our vows through tears and the crowds cheered as we kissed. On our way to the reception hall, I told Holt about what had happened earlier in the ceremony. So, something happened earlier in the ceremony. What happened? Are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm fine right now. Okay, good. Then tell me what happened. Well, when I was walking down the aisle, I stumbled a little and almost fell. Yeah, I was a little worried. Yeah, well, I happened to look into the crowd and I saw my mother just making this face at me. It was the face she always made at me to tell me that I didn't look good. My God, what the hell is wrong with that woman? How could she do that to her own daughter on her special day? I don't know, but in that moment all I wanted to do was run away and cry. But then I took one look at you and I felt all right. That's right. If your mother does something like that again, just look at me. You're beautiful, and nothing your mother says or does will ever change that. Thanks. I needed that. And I was being serious when I said that. I would take action if your mom did something against you again. Now that I know just how much leverage I have over her, you best believe that I will make sure she learns her lesson properly. And I'll be okay with whatever you do. The reception started off well. We started with dancing and drinking, and everyone was having an overall great time. Holt and I greeted all our guests and held conversations with them. I found myself feeling better and better with every interaction. At some point, I saw my mom walk into the hall, but she ignored us and walked straight to the bar. I felt kind of bad, but I figured being ignored was better than being told I looked ugly again, so I let it go. Holt kept me by his side the entire time. I was grateful for that because it was a great distraction. Finally, it came time for the toasts. Holt started it off with a heartfelt toast to us and our relationship, which honestly made me cry. I followed after him, and I was happy to see that I was able to make him feel the same emotions he made me feel with my toast. If there was one thing to mention about the toast time, it was that with every toast that was made to Holt and me, my mom scoffed. It got her a lot of dirty looks, but that did not stop her. At some point, she stood up and said that she had a toast to give to us too. My heart dropped. I knew my mother, and I knew how evil she could be. I knew that this would not end well. Holt held my hand, and when I looked at him, his jaw was clenched. At least we both felt the same anxiety at that moment. My mom began to talk about how I was undeserving of Holt. She praised Holt for the man he was and conveniently brought up how he was her boss, and a very good one at that. When she spoke of me, she kept talking about how ugly I was and how I should be grateful that Holt even spared me a glance. I felt sick. How could she say that? Holt looked like he was going to burst a vein from how hard he was restraining himself. The rest of our guests looked appalled. Finally, when my mother finished her god-awful speech, she sat down with a satisfied smirk on her face. She was happy with the reactions she got. Thankfully, the rest of the evening proceeded without anyone even mentioning what my mom had said. Holt and I tried our best to put everything behind us just for the night. Even when we finally got back home that night, neither of us spoke about it. There was an air of sadness, but we chose to ignore it because we were happy that we were finally legally and officially together. The next day, Holt left for work. He told me that something urgent had come up and he promised to be back by noon, so I didn't mind. True to his word, Holt came back home by noon and we settled into the couch to watch some of our favorite shows. An hour or so later, I heard a banging on the front door. Along with the banging, I heard my mom yelling for me to come out and open the door. I was confused and looked at Holt. I felt his urgent business had something to do with my mom. I walked to the door and opened it. "You absolute wretch! What did you say to him?" "Huh? What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. You made him fire me." "Holt fired you?" "Yeah, and I'm sure it's because of something you said. You're so stupid that you never know what you ever say." "I'm going to have to stop you there, Quinn. I don't think I need to remind you of your speech from yesterday." "But I praised you." "And you completely dissed your own daughter, who is my wife. How did you possibly think that was okay? I told you I'd make you regret it if you even said a word against her." "Whatever. You can't fire me for that. I'll sue you." "You've also been highly negligent with your work. I was going to fire you anyway, but kept you for a few months only because you are Allie's mother. Since you have no respect for her, I see no reason why I should even help you out. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're busy right now. Goodbye." I couldn't believe it. Holt stood up for me in a way that I hadn't even considered. Holt held me in his arms as I cried. I finally felt free. I felt so valued and respected, and I knew that I never wanted anything less than that from then on. I didn't care to find out what happened to Mom after that, and neither did Holt. The two of us continued to live our lives in blissful ignorance of her whereabouts. I've learned just how important it is to have and enforce your boundaries. Don't let anyone ever treat you like you're worth nothing, because I promise you, to someone else, you mean the world. Thank you. Hello, my name is Macy. I'm a 42-year-old woman who's been married twice. My second marriage has been amazing. My first was a train wreck. My first husband's name is Bobby, and we were high school sweethearts. We were your typical jock and cheerleader couple. We had a good time together, and he made me happy at that time. He was also my first relationship, so that was why I went so above and beyond for him. I thought he was my forever, and I sure acted like it too. We planned to go to the same university so we could be together, but in my second year, at 19 years old, I got pregnant. Now, my family was not happy, and neither was I. My mom warned me constantly that life would not be blissful, especially with Bobby. My family never liked him, although they could never tell me why, other than just that something about him felt off. Of course, as a teenager, I wanted to prove them wrong and rebel against them, so I ignored all their concerns. Our families agreed to support us until we graduated and got good jobs, which I was and still am super grateful for. Bobby and I got married in court, and we had our first child. At first, Bobby was an amazing father. I felt like I was proving everyone wrong. And then, about 2 years later, I got pregnant again. This time, I was a college graduate, but I had to quit my job so I could stay back and take care of the kids. Bobby worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. It was a tough life, but at that time I felt that as long as I had Bobby by my side, nothing could make me feel bad. But a couple of months after our second child, Bobby began to behave very differently. I tried to talk to him about it, but he never budged. And then one day, I had taken the kids out for a walk and came back to an empty apartment. None of Bobby's things were there. I panicked, of course, and seeing me panic made the kids cry. I tried calling him several times, but each time took me to voicemail. I remember rushing to my mother's place with 2 kids that were bawling while I tried my best to hold back my tears. My mother looked alarmed when she opened the door and let me in. What happened? I think Bobby left me. What? What do you mean? I took the kids for a walk, and when I got back, the house was empty of all his things. I can't get a hold of him either. Oh no, do you know why he might have left? I don't know. He'd been acting very differently for a while, but he wouldn't talk to me at all, and then today just happened. Okay, calm down a little. We should wait a little while, and if he doesn't show up, we'll file for divorce, and I'll help you out. But I loved him. How could he do this to his children? I know. I wish I could find him for you and ask him all these questions, but we have to move on. Not because it'll heal you, but because you have 2 kids to raise. My mom was right. So I spent the next few months painfully getting over him while raising 2 kids who looked a lot like him. I cried myself to sleep for many nights, but eventually months turned into years and I slowly got over the pain. My kids obviously asked questions about their father, and when they were old enough, I told them the truth. They were devastated, but surprisingly understanding about their past. Together, as a family, we learned to live past the pain. My mom was obviously the biggest help for us, and she made raising 2 kids easier than it would have been all by herself. I happened to meet my current husband, Fred, at a bar 13 years after Bobby left me. I was out with my friends for one of their birthdays. My mom had the kids, and I figured it was the best time to let loose and have a little fun with my friends. For the better of the night, I stuck to my friends and we just chatted and laughed for the most part. Towards the end of the night, I got approached by Fred. My friends had been begging me to get with the guy for years, but I was always too traumatized by Bobby to ever try again. So when Fred approached me, my friends left to go watch from further away as I made conversation with him. Fred started by asking me if he could buy me a drink. I was not going to turn down a free drink, so I obviously said yes. We waited until we got our drinks to properly start talking. So, what brings you here? It's my friend's birthday and I'm just here to celebrate with her. That's nice. How about I send over some drinks for all of them? All of them? There are 7 more people there. It's all right. I'll make up all the money I spent here in the next 2 hours, so no worries. Whoa, so you're rich? Ha, I guess you could say that. Of course I'm not trying to brag or anything. No, it's a great thing to flaunt. Not a lot of people get to do that, and not to mention you aren't being a prick about it. You're buying a bunch of strangers drinks because I told you that it was one of their birthdays. What can I say? I have a particular weakness for pretty women. You're so weak, you'll believe everything they say, even lies? Yes, of course. Although, did you lie? No. It is one of their birthdays, but it is concerning that pretty women make you weak. You should get that checked. How about you help me with it? Maybe if I had a pretty woman by my side, I'd only have a weakness for one woman. I could think of that. It was such a self-esteem boost to have been called pretty by Fred, especially because Fred looked gorgeous. He looked like he was worthy of being on the cover of a big magazine like Vogue. I was also surprised by my ability to casually flirt back with him. That was not something I was usually capable of. I was very much an introvert, so I don't know if it was the drink or just the aura that Fred radiated, but I felt comfortable enough to be flirty. Eventually, my friends came and got me, but not before profusely thanking Fred for the drinks. Before I left, Fred and I exchanged numbers, and from then on, we were constantly talking to each other. It started off as texts, and then we would call each other whenever we had nothing going on, or if we had something interesting to share. We also started meeting up a lot more often. At first, we met up in very public places, but as the months went by, we started hanging out at each other's places. I remember the way my jaw dropped when I walked into his house because it was quite literally a mansion. Fred laughed at my shock and told me that I should get used to his wealth because it would soon be mine. Fred was very open about wanting to marry me. He told me countless times how he had never felt so comfortable around anyone aside from me, and that only made me love him more. Fred was also more than open to me having kids. I remember him being particularly upset for me when I told him about Bobby. Ever since I told him, he went above and beyond to show me just how much I meant to him. Fred and Bobby were worlds apart, and it wasn't until Fred that I understood why so many people did not want me marrying or even just being with Bobby. I was glad that I got out of it, but I hated the way it happened. Fred helped me heal and forget all about it, which I was super grateful for. We only dated a year before getting married. We had a destination wedding and we flew out all our guests, which were technically just a handful of them, because we only wanted those who were really close to us to be there. My kids were super happy for me and told me constantly that they loved Fred, which in my head was another big win. Life from then moved on very smoothly. Every single worry I had was eased. Fred helped my kids out with their education as well, even though I told him that I would take care of it. He showed me that he accepted us as a package deal and not just me and then my kids. He had my kids' rooms decorated and set up to their liking even before we moved in together. Fred did everything that Bobby didn't and more. That was a true point of healing for my small family. And that's how our family grew from then on. Fred and I had a child of our own, yet he never treated my kids differently. About a year after Fred and I got married, my kids asked him to legally adopt them, which once again was a turning point in our family. After that, we became one big family. We did everything that families did, like going out to eat, going on vacations, doing fun things, etc. I was also doing well in my career, and Fred, well, his company was also doing amazing. There was not a single thing in my life that was wrong. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed. One day, out of the blue, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello? Look who it is, it's Macy. Who is this? Don't you recognize me? I don't think you remember much anyway. It's Bobby here. How are you doing? Bobby? What the hell? How did you even get my number? I forgot how whiny you are. I just happened to come across your number and I thought I'd give you a call to see how life has been treating you since you left me? Oh, come on, Macy. We were having way too much trouble and both you and I know that we would have gotten divorced anyway. So you just chose to leave without saying a word? Well, I wanted to avoid all the emotional drama, so I did what I had to do. You are a piece of work. A pretty rich piece of work. Do you know what good it has done me to have left you? I swear it was the best decision of my life. Are you being serious right now? Yes, I married this really rich woman who had kids, but I was willing to overlook it because of her money. She came through though because she got me this amazing job that pays me so much money. I'm living my absolute dream. So you abandoned the kids you did have to father someone else's kids? You got to do what you got to do, am I right? please, never call me again. Goodbye. I was seething. The pure audacity of that man to call me only to brag about his new rich lifestyle. Of course, a part of me wanted to carry on the conversation with him so I could find out where he was, only so I could go there and punch him. But at the same time, I was so overwhelmed with so many different emotions that I could barely think straight. But after I cut the call on him, I felt so much hurt. Not for me, but for my kids. My poor kids grew up for the better parts of their lives without a father who was in fact too busy fathering his new wife's children. I knew we were struggling, but what did he expect? We were only high school graduates when we had our first child. Where in the world would we have gotten money for ourselves? At the same time, I felt disgust roll over me. He was the classic definition of a sleazebag. He clearly wasn't one to give someone attention unless they had something to offer him. I decided to block his number because I didn't want to deal with him anymore. The chapter of my life had been closed for long enough and I never wanted it back open. I told Fred about it later on that night and he was understandably upset. But he was also glad that I blocked Bobby's number. We decided to move forward from that. About a week later, I got a call from another unknown number. It was Bobby once again. At this point, I was beginning to get frustrated. He called to brag again about his luxurious lifestyle. He told me all about the new expensive car he had just bought and how his kids were doing amazing at school. I didn't care to be polite this time and just hung the phone up on him. That did not stop him. He kept calling every week after that to keep telling me about all his expensive purchases. I kept blocking him with every number he called, but it seemed like he kept using different numbers to call me. At some point, I stopped picking up because then he only called me frequently. It seemed like he derived some sort of sick pleasure from bothering me so much. One particular day, I was at work and I was stressed when Bobby called me. "Oh, hey, Macy. Can't you just leave me alone?" "Oh, come on. I'm making up for the time that's been lost." "Well, you're 20 years too late. The kids don't care about you and neither do I. Leave me alone." "You know you love it, Macy." "I really don't. I don't want to hear anything about you or your new good life." "Why? Are you jealous? Are you jealous that I'm living the life that you'll never be able to live?" "I can assure you I don't." "Well, here's something that will definitely make you jealous. I just got a promotion." "I don't give a crap." "You know you're jealous. I just got a promotion at Digidome, one of the finest media companies. I'm going to hang up." I was furious and annoyed, but something he said kept tickling my brain. I was way too angry to think about it at that moment, so I let it go. When I got back home afterward, I thought about what it was that Bobby said that tickled my brain, and then it hit me. He said he worked for Digidome, one of the finest media companies, which I had to agree with. They were responsible for hiring and recruiting some of the most talented influencers and journalists in our city. The reason that I kept thinking about it, Fred is the CEO and founder of the company. Bobby was working for my husband. I could not believe how wonderfully the universe aligned for me. That meant that I could finally teach Bobby a good lesson, not only for bothering me, but also for abandoning his children. I waited with excitement until Fred got back home. When he did, I told him all about what had happened during the day. "Did something happen? Why do you seem so hyper?" "Nothing happened per se, but I did find out something big." "Oh, what is it?" "So, Bobby called again." "That sick son of a gun. I swear if I had any way to get a hold of him, I would beat him up real good." "That's the thing. He may be way closer than we ever expected." Huh? What do you mean? Well, today he called me to brag about his big promotion at work, which is Digidome. You mean to tell me that he works at my company? Yeah. At first, I couldn't help but think his company name sounded really familiar, and then it hit me. Did you really not remember the company I created? Listen, I was way too angry to remember my own name. Cut me some slack. I'm kidding. Anyways, do you want me to fire him? Absolutely, but before you do, I was wondering if there was going to be any way to humiliate him. Definitely. Bold of you to think that I wasn't going to fire him in the worst way possible for him. With that, we began planning how to go about creating the best revenge plan. We decided that we would wait a few more weeks before executing our plan to fire him. That was because we were going to record his calls to me and have them played in front of everyone. The company was going to hold a huge event in 2 months, and to our luck, Bobby was going to be in charge of it. There were going to be several big names present, and we were going to tarnish his reputation. Over the next few weeks, I was able to pick up all of Bobby's calls without getting frustrated or angry. Just knowing that I had the biggest upper hand was enough to put a smile on my face as I listened to him ramble about his wealth and my lack of it. But this time, I made sure to record every conversation. These conversations were going to come back to bite him hard, and I couldn't wait for it. At the end of the 2 months, the event happened. I originally didn't plan to go because I didn't like big crowds or having to talk to a lot of people, which was why no one really knew who the big boss's wife was. However, this event was where I would make my appearance. I wanted to see Bobby's fall while I sat on the throne. Fred bought me this gorgeous and very expensive dress, and that was what I wore. I stayed in the car until Fred called me because we didn't want Bobby to see me and make a run for it. I only entered when Fred gave his speech in which he told everyone about how he wanted to introduce his wife for the first time. When I walked up on that stage, Bobby was standing there. I saw his face drop and pale. I smirked at him as I walked by. He pulled out his handkerchief to dab the sweat that was all over his face. Fred then went on to praise me and talked about how much of an impact I had had on him these past 7 years and how it had been a joy to raise my kids with me. With every praise Fred aimed at me, I saw Bobby sweat even more. I beamed with pride as the crowd clapped for me, and then Fred's speech took a turn. He began to talk about how I had been getting harassed by my ex-husband recently. He told the crowd about how my ex-husband had abandoned me and my kids to go father another woman's children just because she had wealth. But the universe had different plans for my ex-husband because he was working for his company. The crowd gasped and erupted into murmurs about who my ex could have been. Fred asked everyone to quiet down and told them that he was going to reveal who it was. Bobby kept looking towards the exit, but he knew that if he dashed it, Fred would not even have to reveal who it was because he would have outed himself. Fred then pointed towards Bobby and told everyone that it was him. The crowd once again erupted in murmurs. Bobby looked like he was about to pass out, but Fred wasn't done yet. He told everyone that he had proof of all of this and proceeded to play the recordings of all the calls that Bobby had made to me in the past few weeks. Bobby stilled as he heard everything. Fred then announced that because of everything that Bobby did, he would no longer be working with his company. The crowd cheered for Fred and me as we walked off the stage. Bobby was escorted off the event and the rest of it went smoothly. I had served my revenge and there was nothing sweeter than that. Fred and I had a blast at that event, and I even managed to find someone who offered me a position at their firm. The day after the event, I got my last phone call from an unknown number. "You're awfully bold to call me again after last night. You tricked me." "Whatever do you mean?" "You absolute witch. Don't play stupid with me. How could you not tell me that you were married again? And that too, married to my boss?" "Like I told you several times, Bobby, I simply didn't care about you." "I know that, but the decent thing for you to do was to inform me." "So you would only stop harassing me if you knew who my husband was? And if my husband wasn't your boss, you would have continued to do it?" "Don't twist my words." "I'm not twisting anything. And you're one to talk about being decent, Bobby. You know what decent thing you have done? Not abandon your family. If you could do something like that, I can do something like this. Have fun with your current family, and I hope you'll find a new job." "I don't have a current family. My wife left me because of yesterday, and she took the kids. And it's all because of you." "I didn't do anything. You did this to yourself. If you had just not called me, your life would have been what you had always wanted it to be. But I guess you can't have your cake and eat it too. Goodbye, Bobby, and good luck." It felt liberating to finally get back at Bobby and to know that I destroyed everything good in his life. I hope that Bobby learns to never mess with me or my family again, because he will never get anything good out of that. Fred and I continue to thrive together, and our kids have grown into wonderful adults. My life is once again going smoothly, and I no longer stress out about Bobby's calls. I'm finally vindicated, and I feel way lighter than I have for the first time in a long while. Thank you for listening to my story. Hello, I'm Jenny, a 27-year-old woman who just got divorced. I met my husband Jake at college when I was in my freshman year, and he was in his sophomore year. I knew from the time that I met him that he was going to be the one for me. After graduating, we focused on our careers and worked hard to save a lot of money so we could buy a good place to live in. By the time we got married, we had been dating for 7 years. Right after we got married, we purchased our own apartment and decided to start trying for a baby. But after months of trying, we did some tests and got told that I was infertile. I was devastated and inconsolable for a long time, but Jake had been my rock at that time. Jake's sister-in-law had also come over a lot to comfort me, and I did find some comfort in her too. Those were a tough few months for me to grapple with my new reality. But eventually, Jake and I began to see the pros of not having kids, like being able to spend twice the money on ourselves. About 2 years into Jake and I being married, we decided to be the ones to host for the holidays. My parents were on a cruise someplace, so it was Jake's family that joined us. Jake's parents were only stopping in town for a day because they were going on a road trip with some of their friends. They planned to stay the night at a motel so they could leave in the early hours of dawn without disturbing anyone. That only left Jake's brother Keith and his family, which included his wife Paula and his 4 kids. When Jake and I started dating, Keith and Paula had 2 kids from what Jake had told me. They were struggling back then as well. Keith wasn't working in a good enough job to support all of them, and Paula was adamant about being a stay-at-home mom. It was beyond me why they had 2 more children when they were struggling with the 2 they already had, but I digress. Anyway, that holiday, they asked us if they could stay with us for a week. "Guys, we need to ask you about something." "Yeah? What is it? Is everything fine?" Yeah, we just wanted to ask if we could have a tiny staycation at your place with the kids." "Staycation? Yeah, I mean, you're hosting the holidays, and we were wondering if we could spend the entire week here until the 2nd. "We can't afford an actual vacation, and this would be some form of it for the kids." I don't know about that. Our apartment isn't very kid-friendly. We have a lot of expensive or even just fragile things that the kids could break. I'm sure you could manage for just a week, Jenny. Yeah, please, for the kids' sake. Come on, Jenny. Please, just help out my family this once. Fine. But I am warning you that if anything gets broken or damaged by your kids, I expect you to compensate me for it. Yes, of course. I promise that we'll make sure the kids are well behaved. I wasn't too keen on allowing the kids in our home because I did have a lot of collections and other oddities hanging on walls or on shelves that were worth quite the buck. I had no other place to keep them away, because every room in our house would go towards giving Keith and his family a place to stay. I felt really pressured into giving up the space that I considered comfort, because Paula and Jake kept glaring at me while Keith looked at me like he was about to cry in desperation. I felt both intimidated and bad, so I gave in. Of course, my hesitation made Jake really upset with me. When Keith and Paula left our place that evening, Jake began lashing out at me for not helping the family. He asked me over and over again how I could be so heartless and value material things over family. He didn't even let me get a word in. He didn't speak to me for the next 2 days, and even though I was sure that I wasn't wrong to have concerns, I decided to put my own feelings aside and apologize, which Jake accepted and promised me that the holidays would be a wonderful time for us. When the holidays came around, it was a nightmare. The kids were a nightmare to deal with. Keith and Paula conveniently disregarded all their responsibilities and shoved them onto us, or me to be more specific, because Jake spent most of his time with Keith and Paula. Her kids were very undisciplined and very, very ruckus. They loved to destroy everything around them, and it was only a miracle that they didn't hurt themselves. I tried to get one of the other adults present to help with the kids, but they would always conveniently have some other plan to do at the moment. The only time I had true free time was on Christmas, when Jake's parents looked after the kids for a couple of hours. By the time it was New Year's, I was exhausted and ready for them to go back home. It was probably the exhaustion that led to me having an outburst that was bigger than I meant for it to be. What happened was that all the adults were napping while I was tending to the kids as usual. I was changing the diapers of the littlest one when I turned away for a couple of minutes to use the washroom so I could wash my hands. In those few minutes, the other 3 kids went out into the living room and decided to climb onto the showcase that housed a good amount of my trinkets and also functioned as a stand for our TV. Well, to get better grips on the shelves, they decided to throw a bunch of the trinkets on it away, and one of them picked up one of the trinkets and began hitting the TV with it, which damaged the TV screen. When I heard the commotion and rushed into the living room, I was greeted by this huge mess. Of course, the commotion had been loud enough to wake everyone up. The sight of the mess and all of the damage made me lose it. That is it! Whoa, calm down, Jen. It's just a little mess. No, it's not a little mess. They've destroyed everything. I turn around for just a few minutes and everything is ruined. Don't be a drama queen, Jenny. They're just kids. You're right. They're just kids. They can't be blamed, but you can. You are a horrible parent. So is Keith. How dare you? Ever since you got here, I have not had a day of rest. I've been the one looking after them because none of you care to. They're not disciplined at all, and they love to break things. I told you that this would be an issue, and now you have to pay for it. Wow. With the way you're complaining about kids, I'm happy you're infertile. No woman like you should ever deserve to be a mother. Get out. Take your kids and get out. I was hurt and upset. How could Paula say that to me after she knew how sensitive that topic was? Not to mention, that was a really cruel thing to say. Once again, Jake got angry at me, but I didn't care. I was right and he knew it. He could have helped me out with the kids, but he chose not to either. We didn't speak for a couple of days, and I chose to spend New Year's with my best friend, Via, who was very sympathetic to my situation. Jake and I eventually sorted things out, that I did make it very clear to him that I expected to be compensated for the damage, because aside from the TV, a lot of the trinkets were antique ones. I also told Jake that I never wanted to see or hear from Paula ever again. He begrudgingly agreed, but only because he knew I was right. The total damage costs came to around $2,000, and I decided to have them only pay half of it, considering their struggles. And then a couple of months later, Jake told me that he had something to tell me. So, Keith called me today. Oh, that's nice. What did he say? Turns out he got this huge promotion. That's great for him. Guess they won't be struggling anymore, huh? I'm happy for them. Yeah, but he'll be moving to another state, and it's way too expensive to move the whole family there. He asked if Paula and the kids could move in with us. No! I don't see why Paula can't handle the kids herself. Or, now that Keith will be earning more, they can hire a nanny to help her look after the kids. Come on, Jenny, don't be so mean. You know what happened the last time they stayed over for the holidays. I will not let that nuisance back into my home. It's not just your home, it's mine too. This is my family. I'm sorry you're too heartless to care about family, but I'm not that way. If you have such a giving heart, why don't you help them hire a nanny? Or better yet, why don't you go over and help her raise her children? Wow, you really don't care about how much Paula will struggle. Not after she made fun of me for infertility, I don't. You know what? You're too upset right now. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Good night. I couldn't believe Jake's audacity. He knew just how I felt about Paula and her kids coming over, especially after last time. But he still chose to ask me and insult me in the process too. Of course I cared about family, but that's a sentiment that should go both ways. I cared about his family, but they never seemed to care about me. I didn't see why I should have done more than they would have done for me. The next morning, we were back on the discussion, and I firmly told him no over and over again. I suggested alternatives to helping them too, like me sponsoring a nanny, or even us going over on the weekends and looking after the kids so Paula could have some time off. But he shot those down too. Every time I told him that Paula and the kids were not allowed in our home, he would get more and more frustrated. He used every tactic possible, emotional blackmailing, yelling at me, threatening to leave me, you name it, he tried it. I didn't budge. That was a hill I was willing to die on. This argument lasted a good week before suddenly Jake was acting all normal. That made me very suspicious, of course. He was very distant, but he no longer seemed agitated with me, nor did he try to ask me again to let Paula and her kids move in. After a week of constantly asking me and pestering me, this made alarm bells go off in my head. I decided to do a little snooping around. I waited until Jake had fallen asleep to take his phone and go through it. Yes, I know it's wrong, but when you have this intense gut feeling that something's wrong, you just want to check up on it. And that's what I did. I first went through his chats with his brother, and I saw one message from Keith that said, "Thanks for helping Paula and the kids." That immediately confirmed my suspicions that something was happening behind my back. I went through his chats with Paula and then found out that he had gone behind my back and told Paula that she and her kids could come and live with us. He also told her that he planned to give her my room because I was the one who didn't want to help her, so having to give up my room would teach me a lesson. I was furious. Jake and I each had our own rooms. They were rooms that we filled with things that both of us enjoyed individually. Mine also acted as my office on days that I worked from home. So giving up my room also meant giving up all forms of privacy. While a part of me wanted to wake him up right then and there and yell at him for going behind my back and villainizing me, the sane and rational part of me knew that it would lead to nowhere. I would be the one who would get hurt while Jake would continue to live well. I knew at that moment that I had the upper hand and I was going to play my cards right. According to Jake's texts with Paula, she was set to move in 2 weeks, so that gave me 2 weeks to move out beforehand. The first thing I did the next morning was to book a storage room where I could store all the furniture. Yes, all the furniture. You see, after Jake and I got married, we purchased a pretty big apartment. We had more than enough money after saving for years together, and it was our dream apartment. However, after we purchased it, we obviously needed to furnish it, but Jake decided that he didn't want to do that immediately. He wanted to do it after another 6 months. Keep in mind that all we had with us was a mattress, no bed frame, some utensils, and our personal things. Jake said he was tired of constantly not having any money to spend from saving so much for years. I understood his issue back then, so I let him have it his way. 8 months passed and my home was bare as it was on the first day we moved in, save for the few trinkets I bought here and there. Whenever I brought up buying the furniture, Jake would get all moody and upset with me. So I took matters into my own hands and bought everything myself. He didn't spend a dime on anything. From sofas to bed frames and bookshelves to even mirrors, he didn't pay a cent. I was going to remove everything. The only things he paid for existed in his room, so I let that be. The next thing I did was contact my best friend, Fia, and ask her if I could stay over for a rather long period. "Hey, how's it going?" "Not that great." "Oh no, what's wrong?" Jake decided to go behind my back and let his sister-in-law and her 4 kids live with us because his brother is moving to another state for work, even though I explicitly told him not to. "Wait, is this the same sister-in-law that mocked you for being infertile?" "The one and only." "And why can't she take care of her own kids?" "Because they're reckless. Last time they were over, they destroyed about $2,000 worth of things. You can see why I don't want any of them in my house." "Holy crap, yeah. So what are you doing about it?" "Well, I snooped through Jake's phone and found out that he plans to give my sister-in-law my room as a punishment for not willing to help out." "What the hell?" So I was thinking that I would take everything out from the room and the house because I literally bought everything in it to begin with, and I'll keep it in a storage room. I love that thought process, but what about you? Yeah, that's what I was calling to ask about. Do you think I could stay with you until I get back on my feet? It might take a few months. Are you kidding me? Of course you can. We get to have sleepovers for a long time. Hell yeah, you can come over. Just let me know the time and date and I'll help you bring your stuff over. You're an angel. I felt more than ready to teach Jake a lesson. I knew this was technically the end of the marriage because I didn't want to be with someone who was so selfish that they failed to at least consider their partner's feelings. I spent the rest of the 2 weeks discreetly packing away my things and starting the filing procedures for divorce. At some point, except for the big and most commonly used furniture, the rest of it was slowly transported away during Jake's working hours. Thankfully, he was too caught up in his own thoughts to even notice the big differences in the house. A lot of my things were gone to Fia's place too, and he never noticed. My anxiety was high during those 2 weeks because I really wanted my plan to work out well, but also because I wanted to make as clean of an exit as possible. Once the 2 weeks were up, I knew that Jake would call me that day from work and ask me to clean out my room for Paula. So I took a day off work to get the final transporting of the furniture out. I took our couches and mantles and even all the bed frames. Jake would be left with the few things he had when we rented this apartment. Right as the movers had taken the things away and I sat in my car with the rest of my things to go to Fia's place, I got a call from Jake. "Hello?" "Yes, it's me." "What happened? Is everything okay?" "I need you to vacate your room. Paula and the kids are coming over." "I thought we discussed that it wouldn't be happening." "It's happening because I said so." Get on with the plan. And what about the kids? Where will they sleep? They'd have the guest bedroom to share. They're all young enough for that. And you have your room, but I won't have mine? No, because this is your lesson for refusing to help our family. You are a piece of work, truly. You know what? Don't worry, I knew about your plan, so I vacated my entire room, along with all of my belongings in the house. Why did you remove all your belongings? Because I said so. Get on with the plan. Goodbye. It felt amazing to say that to him, but even more than that, I was excited to hear his reaction to the whole thing. Before I left, I also made sure to leave him the divorce papers on the kitchen island because that was where he would first go after work to grab a cold drink. He was going to experience his shock in waves, and I was ready for that. I made my drive over to Fia's and we greeted each other in excitement. We quickly unloaded all my things and got to arranging the room she had given me in a basic manner. We tried to make it as homely as possible just so I was comfortable enough until I had enough time to fully unpack. Once we were done, we sat down to chat for a little while about how I was feeling and what I was going to do further on. However, all throughout that time, I couldn't help but constantly anxiously glance at my watch to check if Jake was done with work and on his way home. He did take longer than usual to get back home that day, but I figured that was probably because he was picking up Paula and the kids. But I knew he had reached home when I got a call from him. I initially ignored it just to stoke the fire a little, but I ended up giving in and picking up after the 5th call from him. What do you want, Jake? You took everything out of the house? Didn't I say that I vacated all of my things from the house? Yes, but that was our furniture and utensils. You can't just take them all away. Why can't I? I paid for them all, didn't I? Even after I repeatedly asked you to start buying things for the house, you never did. So I took away everything. What will Paula and the kids do? Not my problem. I told you to not let them come over, but you didn't listen. Instead, you went behind my back and disrespected me. You're cruel. No, Jake, you're the one that's cruel. I gave you my boundary and you violated it. You know what your sister-in-law and her kids did that last time, and you still invited them over. I would have been okay with you going over to stay there, but you insisted on them staying with us. So have it your way then. Oh, get over it, Jenny. It wasn't even that bad. Yeah, and you can get over me taking away everything that belongs to me too. It's not that bad. Also, I don't know if you saw it, but I've left your divorce papers on the kitchen island. You either sign it peacefully or you contact me through your lawyer. Goodbye. I hung up on him then, and he kept spamming me with calls after. I just put my phone on Do Not Disturb and continued to relax with Fia. All the anxiety in my body left after that phone call was done. I had nothing else to worry about. If Jake did decide to contest the divorce, I would still be safe because we signed prenups. And all the furniture I bought was bought using my individual money and not money from our joint accounts. Jake did end up contesting the divorce, but like I said, I was fine. I don't exactly know about what happened to Jake and Paula and her kids, but from the long rant text that Paula sent me, I'm guessing that they had to drive back to her place that night, and that really upset the kids because they were looking forward to staying at my place. She also told me that since I took away the bed frames, Jake went to live at their place until the new one came, and since they didn't have any spare rooms or beds, he had to sleep on the couch. She kept telling me that I should be ashamed of myself for putting people in need through harder times. A part of me did feel bad for finding that situation funny. Who were the people in need? It was definitely not her. I knew she was just trying to mooch off her responsibilities onto us. As for Jake, he played a stupid game and now he won his stupid prize. It's been about 8 months since all of this happened, and I can happily say that the quality of my life has improved a lot. Living with Fia has been amazing, and in fact, we were even discussing moving in together. That's about it for now. Thanks for listening.